Oh, that whiff is so scary. Dude, late drive rush overhead is the cheapest thing in this game. And you know what? I think there might be some people who don't understand why it's so cheap. So actually, I did prepare a lesson segment for today. We'll go ahead and segue on into it just from that. GG's Rushdown. This game is dog shit. You know what? Listen, when you land the drive rush overhead, it's amazing. That's how the game works. I'm segueing your misery into a lesson here for the chat room. Now, I'm going to talk about today the 5 different levels of drive rush. So I prepared a lesson for the chat and for the YouTube audience about how there's different levels of drive rush Oki that you can incorporate on offense to cover multiple options and different options as you go up the levels, and you have more and more offensive coverage as you go up these levels. But also, it's good to know on defense because you can actually hard counter some of these different drive rush Oki options if you understand how they're applied. So we're going to go through the 5 different levels of drive rush options here and see how you can apply them and defend against them. Okay, so quick primer on drive rush. Why is it so good, and why are we even going to cover this in the first place? Well, you all know drive rush. It lets you move forward with the dash, and it gives you momentum, and when you press a button out of it, it gives you more frame advantage on hit and on block as well. So the reason why on a knockdown people like to go for drive rush and for pressure is because it helps make their pressure more dangerous, gives them higher risk reward. If they block the incoming attack, they get more offensive pressure on block, and if they get hit, they get much bigger combos on hit as well. So that's why people are going for drive rush Oki. But then there's different types of drive rushes, and we're going to cover that here. But first, you got to remember the basis of how drive rush works. When you do a perfect drive rush, you're always going to have 3 frames of startup for the drive rush. That purple on the bottom of the frame meter, that's your parry before it cancels into the actual command dash. If you want to block out of drive rush, you cannot block until 23 frames after the drive rush starts. You're actually locked into this dash for that long. However, you can actually act out of drive rush with an offensive action like an attack, a normal attack, or a special move much sooner. So you see here, this actually, after 8 frames, you can do a jab, for example. So the startup for this jab, it says 11. That's really the 8 extra frames plus the 3 frames of startup for the jab initially that it normally has. You see a regular jab here, it says startup 4, but you have 3 of the green blocks there of startup, the first active frame and the 4th frame. If I do it out of a drive rush, there's 8 more green of startup before it occurs. And so basically 8 frames after the drive rush becomes active, you can do any move you want out of it, including like DP, including a super, whatever. You have to wait those initial 8 frames and the super will actually start up. But this means that drive rush jab is actually 1 frame faster than drive rush block. So always offensive actions happen first out of drive rush before blocking. That builds the rules for how you can apply your pressure as you go. So level 1 drive rush, I call this a quick drive rush. This is going to be your drive rush Oki from like your least advantageous knockdowns. So here I have a knockdown. I'm doing a jab confirm into my medium thunder dash into the punch extension. I'm only plus 18 here, but plus 18 is enough for me to get in and apply drive rush pressure. So it is actually a decent amount of knockdown advantage. For example, after this, if they wake up with jab, I can actually drive rush in, hit them with a button, and get a full combo. Like, I'm able to get there in time. And if I do my towards heavy kick with Viper, this specific setup, I actually get this really nasty trade combo. So you can get in for pressure. I can also get in for grabs if I time it correctly. But why is this only level 1 of drive rush Oki here? Because you can get a meaty button, you can get meaty grab, so you can apply offense. But there's some limited options here. Because this happens so fast, there's only plus 18 on the knockdown. If I try to drive rush and block, I will lose every single time to an invincible reversal because I can't block in time out of this drive rush to bait out a reversal here. Same thing with crouching light punch. Even a crouching light punch, if I drive rush and try to block, that can't happen. And of course, it goes without saying, if I can't even drive rush and block the uppercut or light punch, I can't drive rush and shimmy either to bait out the throw. I'll lose to that. So on offense here, I'm committed to basically committing to an offensive move. I can't bait anything out from the opponent here because of this recovery on the raw drive rush into block. I'm forced to do an attack or I will hit whatever wake up option, be hit by whatever wake up option they do. Meaning if you're on defense and people get these knockdowns where they don't have a lot of recovery, as soon as you see them turn green, your invincible reversal is a guaranteed punish on that drive rush. So this setup specifically with Viper, and you can find other knockdowns with other characters, if they turn green to get extra advantage, reversal is guaranteed to beat it. And I say guaranteed, there's an asterisk there. Of course, I can do something silly like drive rush into DI to hard call out your reversal. Like, there's still layers to this game, but yeah, there's no other way I can stop your reversal unless I do something crazy. Now, remember, this works with reversals that don't have a screen freeze. If you do a level 1, yes, it's true I can't block here. I'm trying to block after this drive rush, but because there's a screen freeze here with the level 1, I can drive rush block, and then during the freeze, I can input my own invincible super and go through it. So if I have no super meter, this is guaranteed if you do your own super, but you got to think about those layers, and that's why usually reversals, OD reversals without a screen freeze are the best, because there's literally nothing they can do to stop this unless they commit to a DI. We're going to do level 2 here of the drive rush setup. So this one, I'm going to do a different knockdown. I'm going to go into my focus force special move knockdown, and this knockdown gives me plus 24 frame advantage. So it's more than 18. We have 6 more frames of advantage here, and this one becomes a little bit more powerful. This is why it's level 2. So as we showed before, once you're plus 18, if people are waking up with buttons, I can drive rush in after this knockdown, and I can exert pressure, right? I can drive rush and hit them, no problem. I can get meaty buttons and meaty throws. However, at this frame advantage, I'm also able to drive rush and block. I have enough frame advantage now I can drive rush at them and hard commit to blocking to bait out reversals. Same thing for even crouching light punch. If I drive rush and block, I'm gonna block the crouching light punch. However, if you see the frame advantage here, I'm actually -2 if I go for this type of bait. Meaning I'm getting in their grill and I'm -2. If I try to drive rush in and they wake up grab, they're gonna grab me. So yes, you have more flexibility with this kind of a knockdown in case you're exerting your offense and they're scared of the pressure. You can make them make a hard commitment here and like drive rush up and block and bait reversals, but you're negative if they call you out and press buttons on wake up, they'll take their turn back. And if they quick tech, you might not actually, maybe if you do a delay tech, you can try to do a delay tech here and block the DP and actually tech the throw at the same time. That is an option, but it's just less flexible than if you had more frame advantage, because you're forfeiting your turn to bait the wake up reversal, but you're actually able to do that with the level 2 driver setup. Okay, this one's a bonus level. This is getting kind of technical. I don't really consider this part of the main driver's levels. So for this knockdown, we're going to do just the heavy punch thunder dash into the extension, and we're going to get one more frame advantage here, plus 25. So I'm going to save state here at plus 25, and we're going to show the options available. So like before, if I drive rush and block, this time, instead of being -2, I'm -1. However, remember I said whiffing a jab is actually faster for C Viper than just drive rush and block? If I drive rush whiff light punch, I'm 0 on block here, which means if I whiff jab and I press another jab right after, I will trade with their wake up button. However, let me give you a scenario here. Imagine the opponent's burnt out. They're scared for their life. You get this knockdown. They don't have any wake up OD reversal. Instead, what they have is a wake up level 1. There is a very special property of pressing buttons at frame advantage 0 and the screen freezes. A very special property. Okay, I've created a save state here. I'm whiffing the driver stand light punch and then pressing my crouching light punch. And if you slow this down, look very closely, you can see as I restore the save state, I'm not pressing anything. C Viper is pressing crouching light punch right there and getting punished by the wake up defensive super. However, because I pressed this jab at frame 0 when the screen freeze happened, I can do this. Or I can do this. So when you activate moves on frame 0 and the screen freezes on that frame, you can always cancel them into another option. So if you do these setups where you purposely set up your frame advantage to be 0, so that if the opponent wakes up with a super and you press a button right then, you can option select your way out of it. If you see the screen freeze, just start holding parry if you have the meter, or go straight into your own invincible super, and you can power through it. So in action, it'll look something like this, like you just do this setup, And then I actually pressed jab there, and if they didn't do super, my jab would have came out to let me continue the offense. But if they do super, I get to carry, cancel, and punish. So if you get those kind of driver setups, it can be useful for limiting your opponent's options if you want to bait out their supers. So kind of a bonus level right there. So for level 3, we're going to solve a problem that these previous setups had. So we were at max plus 24 with these different setups. And the problem with these setups, beyond just like limited advantage when baiting out reversals, you also don't even have enough frame advantage to go into drive rush overhead. So level 3 for the drive rush setups are ones that have enough frame advantage to add the next layer of offensive mix. You need more frame advantage to be able to use an overhead where it can actually beat the wake up button. So we're gonna get a knockdown here that gives us a lot more, or a decent amount more frame advantage. So this knockdown is going to make us plus 30 instead of plus 24 like the level 2 advantage. And, you know, at plus 30, of course, we can just drive rush buttons, do whatever we want, drive rush into grab, and then, you know, drive rush block and bait out reversals. But also, we're finally at the point where drive rush overhead will beat wake up buttons, giving you a much more airtight mix where your high and low option are both able to beat wake up buttons and not lose those options. So you're at the point at level 3 where all of your attack options, all of your meaty options are available to beat their fastest wake up normals. At this level, you are plus enough in order to drive rush and bait and be plus on block in case you do bait reversals. But no matter what, you don't have enough frame advantage, and often you don't have enough spacing in order to bait wake up throws with a shimmy. Now you can potentially do things like drive rush and maybe like neutral jump, depending on the character. If you have a really low hitting jump in, or maybe like drive rush backdash, you can start incorporating other options. Like you start getting more options, right? Like you can incorporate other more committal throw evasion techniques. But you can't get like a basic walking shimmy unless your specific knockdown leaves enough spacing. And usually if it does that, you're not going to be able to shimmy on both quick rise and back roll, because on quick rise or recover in place, you're going to be too close. And on recover backwards, you're going to be too far away. So just less flexibility in the throw bait department, but you are plus enough to potentially like backdash and throw bait that way. Finally, we're at level 4 out of 5 for the drive rush Oki options, and this is where you start to really unlock almost everything. So for this knockdown, we're going to simply use Sea Viper's Light Thunder Dash and route into it with the punch extension, and this knockdown gives you plus 37 frames of advantage. So like before, all the different levels, we're able to meaty with attacks, throws, and overheads, and we're able to block reversals. But now finally at this level, we're able to also get in there, walk back, and bait the throw. So obviously shimmy baits are really powerful because not only do they bait out the throw, it covers multiple options. It also baits out the reversal. Usually when you bait out the reversal at the lower levels, you're too close to eat throw, and so you run the risk of the opponent waking up and grabbing you, but not at level 4. You have enough advantage to actually walk out of range, and that applies both to quick rise, recover in place and recover backwards. So here, recover in place, even though they're closer, I'm still able to walk out of range. And with Sea Viper, that means I'm able to get really big damage to punish them for whiffing that throw. So suddenly, mid-screen, with this type of drive rush Oki at level 4, you have drive rush low, you have drive rush overhead, you have drive rush meaty for pressure to set up tick throws, you have drive rush throw itself, and you have drive rush shimmy to bait out reversals and wake up tech. So at this level, you can see how you have so many more flexible options for your pressure, and it becomes a lot more dangerous and more variable for the opponent to challenge. So as you go up in these levels, you have far more flexibility in your offense and far more gambles you have to take on defense to read what option the opponent is going to do. And finally, we're going to get to level 5, where basically the world is your oyster. I'm just going to do a basic combo here, like ending in EX burn kick. We're going to be plus 46, plus 44 to plus 46. At this level, of course, you can shimmy. You can go for any kind of meaty option. You can do any offensive mix you want. However, I think at this level, we unlock the final option, which I actually demoed very much in the beginning of this video, because at this point, with the opponent scared of all of your offensive options, including, you know, the shimmy, the low, the overhead, and the throw, by the time you reach the opponent and you let the drive rush continue for this long, you're late in the drive rush. When they finally wake up and you're green in their grill, oftentimes, because they know they can't just reversal, because at any moment you can just block last second, they're not likely to go for this option. Of course, sometimes they will, but you can block last second and punish that easily. What ends up happening, opponents will simply commit to taking the grab. Just block it out because the advantage is so loaded in your favor at level 5 with this much frame advantage that the best thing to do is to take the throw. However, in their attempt to block, they open up the extremely late drive rush overhead. I mean, just let this thing rock as late as possible and then hit forward and your overhead input as late as possible, and then you can get massive round stealing conversions with the late drive rush overhead. And it works because of all the layers we just built up in the previous examples, right? They're so scared of all these options. The objectively mathematical statistical best play to do is to just take the throw and block, which means they need to block low and react to the overhead, and oftentimes they will not react to the overhead. I used to get hit by this all the time, and I wondered why it was working, and finally I started employing it myself, and now I hit people with this all the time myself, and I'm telling you, it just works. People are scared as hell of getting hit by a meaty drive rush at this point, but they try to react to the overhead, they don't, and, you know, you just kill them. So with Sea Viper at this point, just get a nice little conversion to level 3, and then GG, the game is yours. So with that said, those are the 5 levels of drive rush Oki you can use and how you can build more frame advantage and get stronger and stronger Oki options as you get more frame advantage. And it kind of compartmentalizes and breakdowns each one of these different options, so you understand, like, hey, a really fast close drive rush without a lot of frame advantage will always lose to reversals most of the time. And then a knockdown with a lot of advantage has a lot more flexibility to do late overheads, reversal baits, and different types of offensive options. So you can use it on offense and defense. And with my camera dying for the last time, I'm going to call it quits there. Thanks for watching. Of course.